The Bible is a living word that reads us as we read it. It's a person, a voice that proves that time is not linear, as one sentence can confirm the past, guide the present, and declare the future. You are here. I am here. He is here. We are here. Right now, in the tomorrow of yesterday and in the yesterday of tomorrow, I thank you for joining today. So we're back. Thank you so much for joining once again. In our last episode, we talked about a somewhat comical opportunity that David had to take Saul out while he was relieving himself in a cave. David and his men actually happened to be hiding in the exact cave that Saul found himself squatting in. Despite the advice of his men, who were definitely about that life and were tired of having to deal with Saul, David refused to cause harm to the Lord's anointed. Instead, David snuck up and he cut off the corner of the hem of Saul's robe, which we learned in ancient days was often decorated and matched the person's status, authority, reputation, etc. So once Saul finished and he left the cave, David revealed himself to Saul and let him know that he was within inches of Saul, but didn't actually cause him any harm. David made it very clear, I don't know what internal dialogue you have going on. I don't know what has led you to believe that I'm out to get you, but if I were really out to get you, you would have gotten. David showed Saul the fabric that he cut from the hem of his robe. And it was in that moment that Saul realized, yo, man, you are a better man than I am, for real. You solid. You a good guy. And it's very clear to me right now that you are going to be the king. When that happens, just promise me you're not going to take my family out. David assured Saul that he had no intention of causing him or his family any harm. And then Saul went on about his way. Despite the fact that they just had this wonderful, heartfelt conversation, and despite the fact that Saul had this realization of who David was and what it is that he carried, Saul was still an unstable man, and David knew better. So rather than him returning home also, he and his men went back to the stronghold. From there, David and his men went back to the wilderness of Maon near Carmel. Not sure if you all remember, this was the wilderness where David was on one side of the mountain and Saul was on the other side of the mountain. And Saul was closing in on him, but got called to fight the Philistines because the Philistines attacked the Israelites while Saul was out in the field being negligent and fixated on taking David out. In the wilderness of Maon, there was a wealthy man named Nabal. Now, Nabal was described as wicked, ill-tempered, hot-headed. He literally was called the son of Belial, which was another way of saying he was the son of the devil. This man was not the most pleasant guy. However, David heard that Nabal was shearing his sheep. Now, in ancient days, sheep shearing time was a time of celebration. There was wool to be sold. There was money to be had. And it was a festive time where the community gathered to eat good and to drink even better. It was like a citywide cookout. When David and his men lived in the wilderness of Maon near Carmel, they looked out for Nabal's men who were out caring for the sheep. Essentially, they protected the sheep of this man. Keep in mind, these are 600 outlaws. So they're essentially a wall of protection because it was unlikely that people were going to be quick to cross them. So naturally, David did not think that it would be out of line for him to send 10 of his men to go and ask Nabal for provision. Essentially, David was asking for a plate at the cookout. When Nabal got word of the request, you would think that he would be more than happy to give what he already has an abundance of, but no. Instead, Nabal insulted David. He insulted his men. He's like, who does this dude think he is? Why should I take food from my men and give it to these outlaws? Nah, I'm good. David got word back that Nabal refused to offer provision, to which David replied, strap up. Grab your swords, let's go. So David, along with 400 of his men, put on their swords and started out to go and have a little talk with Nabal. 200 of the men stayed back with the equipment. A lot of people want to jump down David's throat. Oh, he's overreacting. It's not even that serious. But let's talk about it. David is a man that's chosen by the Lord. He's a man of noble character. He's admired by many, right? The would have been crown prince is his bestie. His wife is literally a princess. He's full of faith. He's courageous. He beheaded a giant that an entire army feared. He led his men into many victories. He fears the Lord. He refuses to avenge himself against the Lord's anointed, a man who has set his intent on wiping him out. David is many things. But let's not forget that he is also a human. I imagine that he's tired. He's hungry. He's on edge. Hadn't had a good night of sleep in a long time. He's had his head on a swivel trying to protect a life and a calling that he didn't ask for. He isn't sure who to trust because some have helped him while others have sold him out just to be in the king's good graces. He's watched innocent people die because of their affiliation with him. He's responsible for 600 outlaws who found him and surrendered to his leadership when he wasn't trying to lead. He was just trying to live. Not only does he have to figure out how to feed himself, now he has 600 other growling tummies to fill. David isn't asking for much, he just wants to live. And at a time that was culturally filled with hospitality, David made a request for a wealthy man to give provision to a group of men who helped to protect and secure his prosperity. And Nabal, with his ungrateful self, thought that it would be wise to hurl insults at David and his men. David had enough. He was over it. And I imagine that to himself, he's thinking, it is not indecent of me to want to be treated like a human. Think about it. This is the same man whose father did not originally call for him when Samuel was about to anoint the next king. The same man whose brothers talked about him and dissed him just because he was on the battlefield inquiring about Goliath. This is the same man who has escaped a number of flying spears from a man who he sat and played the harp for so that he could have some peace of mind. David hasn't done anything wrong. He's living his life, minding his business. The Lord chose him. The man of God anointed him to be king. He wasn't seeking that out. He had faith, so he fought a giant. And now, because of jealousy, Saul is out to get him. He's in a position that he didn't ask to be in. He's hungry. He just wants to eat. He has found himself in situations where he naturally is taking care of people. He is watching over people only to have this very ungrateful man be ugly toward him. He's over it. He is over it. So he mobilizes 400 of his men, and they're on their way to get a better understanding. Meanwhile, one of Nabal's servants had some sense, and he found Nabal's beautiful and sensible wife, Abigail, and gave her the whole rundown. Listen, respectfully, your husband is tripping again. David, he's a good man. He watched after us. He took care of us. He made sure none of our sheep were harmed. They weren't stolen. Nothing was taken from us. All he did was ask for some provision because we got it and he needs it. But when he asked, Nabal was talking all that gibberish again. And I'm just here to tell you, if you don't do something, it's not going to be good. I imagine that Abigail sighed deeply and said under her breath, that fool. She wasted no time. Immediately, she started putting together a nice care package for David and his men, and she sent it on ahead of her on some donkeys. Without telling her husband Nabal what was up, she hopped on a donkey herself and set out to go meet David. David, still heated, was griping to his men, man, that no good for nothing. I can't believe we looked after his flock in the wilderness. We took care of him. We were top level security. And what good did it do? Man, may the Lord take me out if even one man in his household is still alive by morning light. While he was in mid-gripe, David saw Abigail coming toward him. She hopped off her donkey and bowed at his feet. Before David could get a word in edgewise, Abigail assumed full responsibility for Nabal's insult. Listen, just blame me. It's all on me. I accept all fault. Just please hear me out. I married a fool, as his name suggests, because his name Nabal meant fool. But she said, I married a fool, and I know he's hot-headed. I know he's wicked. He's got a bad attitude, but don't pay him no mind. If I would have known that you sent your men, we would not be having this conversation right now, because I would have hooked y'all up, but I didn't know. Now look at you all worked up. You're better than that. David, his face started softening up a little bit. Abigail continued, look at how the Lord has had your back and taken care of you up to this point. Why don't you let him handle this? Keep your record clean. You don't need blood on your hands. The more that Abigail honored David and spoke to his character and his calling, the more the situation was de-escalated. Before you know it, David was praising the Lord. He's like, praise the Lord that you came and talked some sense into me. Because I will admit, I was in my feelings a little bit. I was on my way to do some real damage. I'm going to let you know. But you've talked me down. You're absolutely right. The Lord has avenged me. And I know that he will avenge me again. David accepted Abigail's gift, and he and his men were able to eat good. And Abigail went back home in peace. When Abigail made it back home, she found that her husband Nabal was full as a tick. He was partying like a king and drinking like a fish. So Abigail didn't even bother telling him at that time what just went down. But in the morning time, after he sobered up, she told him everything that happened. And when Nabal heard what happened, his body glitched on him, literally. One translation says his heart died on him, and another one says he had a stroke. But whichever it is, he ended up paralyzed. And about a week and a half later, the Lord just finished the job and unplugged his clock. When David heard that Nabal had expired, he thanked God for avenging him and protecting him from unnecessary blood on his hands. And then, with great gratitude, he sent for Abigail and wifed her up. Yes, he did. Yes. She finds she's sensible and she sees me? Absolutely. So he married Abigail, to which she happily obliged. Okay, so let me explain, because we know that David was married to Saul's daughter, Michal. However, y'all remember when Michal helped David escape out the window because Saul was out to get him? She put the idol in the bed, pretending that David was asleep. When Saul caught her in a lie, Michal defended herself with another lie by saying that David threatened to take her out unless he helped her. So as far as Saul knows, David is not good for his daughter anymore. So that's why he gave her over to another man. So David now is married to Abigail, and he found himself another wife named Ahinoam from Jezreel. In other news, Samuel, the man of God, took his last breath and died. We're not given many details surrounding his death. What we know is that he died. They mourned his death. They had a funeral and they buried him. Before we go, I want to say this, and I want you to hear my heart, because I mean well, and I am in no way condoning unholiness or unrighteousness. In the same way that we saw David, a very devout man of God, someone who the Lord selected, someone who had enough honor for God and the things of God that he wouldn't even take out someone who you would think he justifiably could have. David had a lot of honor for God. But David also had times when he wasn't operating in spirit, he operated in flesh. We certainly will see this more again in the future, Lord's willing. David had a lot going on. He was under a lot of pressure. And at this time, we saw the danger of how something seemingly so insignificant could be that last straw. David was about to do something very damaging. And not so much because of what Nabal did or said, but I believe it had a lot to do with all of the other events that led up to that moment. It's very important that we extend grace to people when they find themselves operating in the flesh and not in the spirit. I think it's very important that we extend grace to the fact that there's more to the story than what we see. There's a whole narrative that we don't necessarily know all of the details about. So before we're quick to judge people, especially those who we know have been anointed or called by God, it's very important to recognize the humanity of them and the fact that they too need the blood of Jesus to cover their faults and their sinful ways. Another thing I gathered is the necessity of having people in our lives who are able to speak to our calling and speak to our character and to be able to say, what you're doing is not right. No, no, don't do that. I think we need to be courageous enough to be the person that says, hey, I'm noticing some things that's not like you. Correct that, or it could cost you. We also need to be gracious enough to be the recipient when someone does have the courage to come to us and say, that's not like you. You need to get your act together. Or that thing, those things that you're doing could be very costly. We all need an Abigail, and we all need to be Abigail. I'll leave you with that. And I look forward to our next episode. Until then, thank you again for your support. I am very, very grateful for you. You have no idea, and I mean that. I am deeply grateful for you. I look forward to next time. Until then, bye for now.